Uh, we will cover any ODI BA apps. It is just not a detailed one, it is just walkthrough. ODI BA apps project walkthrough just for 1 or 2 sessions, or if any standalone project. So mostly, so nowadays there is a much demand for BA apps implementation with ODI. So what is the culture, methodologies, process we follow in ODI? So especially in ODI BA apps implementation. So I can just give a walkthrough on 1-2 sessions on the BA apps implementation with ODI. So where you will get a feeler of how BA apps implemented. That is typically a packaged application where we will be using ODI as a ETL tool and OBAE as a reporting tool, and then internally how the out of box code development is implemented through BIACM and config manager. So these are all tools which are coming as a package. uh, Once you have at least 1 or 2 sessions walkthrough, you will come to know how this is working, and also at the same time will come to know how ODI is actually used in the data integration projects. So that is the total agenda. But mostly here people are already aware of the data vision concepts. I'm just going to skip through this session actually, which is the data vision concept. But I have very much the recorded sessions I can share you in case if anybody want to refer it. Okay, so that's not a big issue. But in some concepts are if required, I can also cover it. That's not an issue. So now today, the first will the before start of the data ODI or whatever it is. Okay, so there is a big topic on what is the ETL, because there are so many tools in the market available which supports data integration. But what is the major difference from the ETL versus ELT? Okay, and then what is the concept of ETL, and then what is the concept of data integration? So just for fundamental purpose, I'll walk through today. Okay, so just to start before, so mostly when we talk about the ETL, so first ETL is a process, and it is known, it is very popularly known as, everyone knows that, extract, transform and load. So what is, when I say ETL, it is ETL is a process, and what is this process involved? Typically ETL process involves data extraction and transformation and loading. Say for example, if you have some data sets, okay, though it could be in any of the database, it can be a file, or it can be RDBMS, or it can be big data, or it can be any web services. And if there is a need or requirement of data extraction, and once you extract, okay, to bring your data into required formats, okay, and we need to apply some transformation logics, and then finally we have to push this data into your target location or database, and again that can be any RDBMS file or anything. And wherever this kind of requirement is there, so generally, or this kind of activity you are performing, we call it as a ETL process. Means simply extraction, no matter in which database, in which source your data is there, and you want to load irrespective of which technology it is. And then in between, of course, and as part of our requirement, we may have to apply a lot of transformation rules. So generally that is known as ETL process. And this ETL process normally known as, and generally in the older days we used to do in a manual method. So typically we can do this ETL process in any manual method also. That can be like writing some Java programming, or writing some shell scripting, Perl scripting, In older days, okay, these ETL activities were completely developed through manual process. Say for example, now I have some data in somebody give me some tables in Oracle database, and then I have some data in IBM iSeries database, and then I have some data in some other like XML file. So all this data I want. Anyway, I am recording it. I can share you. You don't have an option, but I have a option to record it, and I am doing it. Okay. So that is in the process in a manual process. In case we have some sources, irrespective of anything, generally we call it as a heterogeneous data sets or heterogeneous databases. And in case you are following the manual method, we have to develop our own code. Typically, we follow or we use any programming languages like shell script, PL SQL, Java, or Perl scripting, or it can be anything. And it is possible to do the ETL extraction through any manual code, but only the bigger challenge in the manual implementation of the ETL code is in case, say for example, if you have three different databases from which if you want to uh, process the data, we need to learn all these technologies because we are going to write code, our own code programmatically. And in case we have so many databases, we need to learn all these technologies. That is the first major pain. The second, and since all these, most of the technologies which are supported through generally write V programs in a procedural language, so the code development will take a lot of time, and then code manageability, code change management, and then deployments is going to be very very tough in a procedural programming languages, and also it will be very very lengthy. Even if you want to do a small activity in mainframes, okay, we need to write too much of code, and that leads to a problem in change management. Okay, even there is a 5,000 lines of the code written by somebody else, and if you want to make a small change, and we need to understand the complete code, and that itself takes so many days, and then finally you need to make a change, and then again you need to thoroughly test it. It will take lot of it will bring into the lot of complexity, a lot of time consuming and all. And then finally, the main other third pain point is, even if you try to spend so much of time, and even if you try to manage your code, but ultimately since you are developing if you are using so many technologies, and you may not be expertise in any of the technology because you are traveling on multiple technologies, and you cannot be master in any of the technology. So these are the major pain points generally when you are doing ETL in a manual method, but it is technically possible to do it. In older days, if you take GE and then AT&T, these are all the technology, all the companies, they were doing their ETL process through manual coding only, using Perl scripting, shell scripting, and all those things. But we know what are the pains and all that. That is the reason from the 1990s and 80s, people started looking alternates for this. So that is where we started getting a new software tools which are known as ETL tools, okay, which are built graphically, and which are exclusively to process or to follow ETL activities, or to develop to develop code for ETL process. So what is the benefit of the ETL tools? These tools can help you to develop the code from any of the source and to any of the target. So irrespective of your sources and then your targets, and if you learn one particular ETL tool, they can help you to generate the code on behalf of you, and then you can easily develop the code because they support graphical development of the code. And since they know how best and from each and every technology, what is the best methodology to generate a code. So you will get a optimized code to process your ETL, and also very easy, and code development efforts are minimized, and then code management, change management, and then everything is become very, very easy. And that is where it has become a lot of very popular, and then there was a lot of traction in those days. That is where ETL has become very ETL tools have become very popular in 1990s, and then still it is continued. So the overall ETL process is an activity, and to perform this activity, we can either manually develop code, or even we can generate some ETL. We can use some ETL tool, and that will make our life easy to make our ETL process very quickly. So in ETL tools, so what are the tools we have typically, and to process ETL or to do ETL activity, so we can use any one of the tools. There are many companies available in the market. Okay, and from Informatica Corporation, we have one famous tool called Power Center, and then from IBM we have Data Stage, and from Ab Initio organization we have Ab Initio. And for Microsoft lovers, it is SSIS. And from SAS, it is SAS ETL Studio. And from SAP BODS is there. And from open source category, we have a Talent Studio. And from other open, but now it is not open source, we have something called Pentaho. And like this, there are many. And from Oracle Corporation, we have something called OWB. And even from Oracle Corporation, we have something called ODA, Oracle Data Integrator. So these are the top tools available in the market, and these are the organization names, and then these are the tool names. Okay, and then maybe even if I miss something, okay, that's okay. These are the top tools. Maybe there are some hundreds of the tools available in the market, but very high level, which we generally see. Okay, these are the tools, and out of which all these tools, if you I can pick up all the work, and the role of all the tools is 100% equal to the same. All the tools generally support ETL process. That's all in a simple one liner. Okay, but only the difference is that when we are using these tools, and these tools are going to perform ETL process, ETL activity, but only the difference is when we are using these tools, and then when we are actually processing the data, the kind of methodology they follow. And in industry, there are two different methodologies when you are doing ETL activity, when you are doing ETL process. And to perform your ETL process, there are two different methodologies. And one is one methodology. Say when I say the previous one is I am calling as activity, and then this I am calling as a methodology. So ETL process is always same: extraction, transformation, and load. But methodology means when you are making this activity, how you are making this activity. And further, there are two different methodologies, and one methodology is called ETL, and then one methodology is ELT. And the ETL methodology is okay, that is simply extract, transform, and load only. But in the ETL methodology, we have something slightly different, that is extract, load, and then transform. Okay, so the methodology is so there is a you can simply understand. I'm calling here it as a ETL activity, ETL process, but here I'm calling as a methodology. What is the difference? How you can differentiate the activity and methodology. Okay, in a simplest way, say for example, now I am planning to travel from India or Delhi to, let's say, US. So my source is Delhi and then target is US, and then I want to travel from here to here. So the activities I am going to travel, and the source is Delhi and New Delhi, and then target is US, some of the city. That is my activity. That is a travel activity and source and then destination. But what is the methodology means? When when I am really traveling from this source to the destination, how are you really traveling? But detailed. What is your approach? Okay, what is the process, or how are you really traveling? That talks about the methodology. Say for example, someone can try, okay, directly catching a flight from Delhi to US, or somebody can catch a flight from Delhi to Dubai, and then from there you can go to US. So there are different ways of traveling from here to there. So here methodology talks about how you are actually performing your ETL activity internally, how it is happening. So there can be different ways, depends on your requirement. Okay, but activity is always same irrespective of which tool you are using and what you are doing. But so methodology will be slightly different, and every tool, when it is generating the code, when it is actually processing your data, and how this processing is going to happen depends on that. And we will define the methodologies, and there are two different methodologies. One is ETL and then ELT. And when you look at in the industry, so almost all the tools whatever we have available in the market, and they all follow ETL methodology except the one tool which is listed over here in the ODI. So that is where how we can differentiate ODI from other tools. Okay, where all other tools are originally follow ETL methodology, whereas ODI will just follow the ELT methodology. And at the same time, and nowadays, like the people realize that the power of or importance of the ELT methodology. So that is where even every company and every tool also started supporting ELT. Okay, but their core methodology is ETL when they are processing the data, but they support ELT methodology also to some extent, some 30 to 40%, okay, in different scenarios. But whereas in ODI, it is completely built to process the data in ELT methodology, and at the same time, it also supports ETL methodology. It 100% supports ETL methodology, and it 100% support ELT methodology. And then whereas other tools, they are 100% ETL, and then to some extent from 30 to 60% range, they also support ELT methodology. So depends on, some tools give more flexibility, some tools will not give flexibility. So it depends on the situation, use cases, that ELT percentage may go from 30 to 60, 70%. But they are all core data processing methodology will be ETL only. And for the ODA, it is ELT. Okay. Now, so now this is a very high level of what is ETL activity, and then what are the tools available in the market, and then what is the methodology ETL and then ETL. So now we'll go a bit detailed about what is the difference on the ETL and then ELT, and why now industry is saying ELT is better, and then why that ODI is picking lot of traction in the market in terms of the data processing. That we'll have a look at. So before that, okay, one small point. Okay, so now maybe people who are already working, they know, okay, what is the use, and what are the business cases we have for ETL activity, and depends on that we understand what is the job market and all. But if there are any new people or people who are not aware of ETL tools and all that, just for the benefit of them. So the tools are there, but what is the demand, or what is the real use cases, or where do we really use these ETL tools? Just to give a background. So mostly these ETL activities or ETL tools generally very much useful in three different activities in IT industry. Okay, so people will get it out. So we have a Java, we know where we use Java. We have some databases, where do we use database? But where do we use these ETL tools? If you have a question yourself. So generally these ETL tools we typically use in three different activities or three different types of projects in IT industry. And one is the data integration and data migration and then data warehousing. Out of which 80% of the time, and to implement the data warehousing, the ETL activity is mandatory. Without ETL activity, there is no data warehousing projects. And also parallelly, we will also have the data integration and then the data migration as well. But overall, you will see by learning ETL tools, and you have a uh, options to get job, or you may have most of the time to get jobs in data warehousing, and also at the same time you also may be part of data integration migration as well. Okay, anyway, the data warehousing concepts many people are already aware. Okay, and then we have a recorded sessions I can share you. But what are these three high level to explain in a one liner? So the data migration means, okay, in case you have data in one database or in one application, and if you want to move to other application, other database, and we need a ETL activity. Why? Say for example, now I have some data and I started my organization. Initially, I started with MySQL database, but now it is not supporting or it is not scalable because my organization is growing and then customer base has been increased. So now this data I need to move on to like other traditional database like Oracle or the recent popular databases like NoSQL, Cassandra, MongoDB. So in this case, I need to completely move data from MySQL to Cassandra or MongoDB. But here if you see, your MySQL database structures will be completely different from the Cassandra and another traditional article. So that is the reason we need to extract complete data from your MySQL and then load into your target database, could be Oracle or MongoDB or Cassandra. But means here we need a extraction process and we need a loading process. But at the same time in between, we need also transformations. The reason is you may have some data types in MySQL which may not support in your MongoDB. So you need to convert them, or even some kind of data objects you have in MySQL, but they are not supported in Target. So you need to convert to them. Maybe the data point of view or data structure point of view. So any the data activity processing which we perform generally we known as a transformation. So that is the reason in any data migration projects we need a ETL activity mandatory, and you have every right to choose any one of the tool we have listed earlier. Okay, because extract, transform and all. But these projects lifetime span will be very minimal because it is going to be one time activity and the span will be like 3 to 4 months maximum. That is the reason we don't see much projects in the industry on the data migration, but they are there and you may be part of that projects also. It is like in a data migration is a simple lift and shift. Let's say you are currently staying in one house and then you are planning to move to another house. You will completely take your belongings and then shift to new house. Okay. And once you are shifting, you will discontinue your old house. Same way, it is a migration and the span will be very minimal. And other side, data integration. So the data integration means the name itself, integrating the data from one application to other application. And so there are different ways. Mostly for the data integration, people nowadays are using web services. Okay, and either through ETL tools or even they can use some other web service methodology also. So in this data integration, most of the times it comes as like exchanging the data from one application to other application. Say for example, the best example would be So you have an account in one HDFC bank and you are planning to transfer your money to other ICICI bank. And ICICI bank using some, let's say, Sybase database, and then HDFC bank is using some mainframe. But I want to interchange my data from here to there, and again, both technologies are different, both applications are different. So this is where we can use ETL tools, okay, to extract data. So you went and then added your beneficiary, and then you made some transfer. So the information, whatever balance you are going to add into another account, so this information has to go to other application. It should validate your data and then it should submit the data on the target. This is where you are integrating the data from one application to other application. Okay, and real time everywhere you will see the data integration everywhere. Say for even example, you are paying some money in e-seva, me-seva center or any government approved authorized center. If you are paying any utility bill, so you'll be paying in some web service, but that is going to be updated in the real utility database later on. Okay, and the utility database might be different, and then the payment where you are doing that might be different. Again, the data is getting interchanged. And in that case, if there is a bulk data exchange, we can very well prefer ETL. But if it is a single transaction basis, we can still use some web services, MQ series and all that. But these projects are very well there. And the best other example is if I am paying like in a month end, if I want to deposit salary for 1 lakh employees, and again this will become a batch. So you should have all your employees data with amount and account number, and if I push it through ETL process, it is going to update there in the target bank database. These are all best some small examples. And here also either I can do a web service or ETL tools, and even companies, many companies are using ETL tools there. The last one is the data warehousing. To perform data warehousing, it is mandatory to have or to develop ETL tools, and that is a separate session. I have it, and then I can help you in processing and help understanding what is the data warehousing. But most of the time, and once we have these ETL tools, we are typically going to build them in the data warehousing. I can share you that, and also you are already well aware of what is data warehousing projects and all that. So that is a very high level about where these ETL tools are really going to be used. And the data warehousing part I am not covering here, and that takes another 3 to 4 sessions, and that I can share you the recording. So now we'll come back to the ETL versus ELT, okay, which is actually mandatory for us to proceed on to the ODI. Okay, so now as we already discussed in ETL and ELT, these are the two different methodologies. And to give a best practical example how they actually differ in terms of the data processing. Okay, so here I am just taking a simple use case which can help you to understand, then I can give you overview on that one. So to take a simple example here, and I am building and taking a small use case here. This use case is a very simple use case and will make you understand in a better way what is this methodology. Okay, say for example here I have some data in EMP in the form of text file. So somebody gave me some employees information in a text file. I have employee IDs, names and then address. And then at the same time I have some data in XML file which contains all the department's information. So this is my input. Somebody gave me this input, then asking me to join these two and then finally load this data into one final target table, which is the RDBMS table. Say for example here you take it as Oracle database. And now I preferred initially using Informatica or Data Stage or any ETL tool. And this you can call as the sources because we are planning to extract data from here. And this you can call as a target where you are planning to finally load your data. So in this example, and the moment when you say that I want to process this extraction and joining this data, that is the transformation and loading through any ETL tool. So first we should have your software installed. For that I bought one server and then I installed, let's take example of Informatica, and then I developed a program. So program development will be much easier because we use graphical tools and all that. We have a graphical IDE, so you will not have any pain in a program development. And now I executed this program on a ETL server which we have developed in a graphical tool. So when you submit your job or program, and since we are expecting these two heterogeneous databases to be joined, so in case if my two input databases or input data sets are in the same database, say for example Oracle or DB2, it is very easy for me to join. But here the problem is these two technologies are completely different. It is one like X language and this is a Y language. And if they want to communicate, they know technologies of each other. So it is one X language and this is one of the French language and it is a Chinese language. And if you want to communicate to both and if they don't know each other, it is very difficult. So that is the reason here your ETL server will become like a translator or a mediator, okay, and which knows both languages. And here in the case it knows both technologies. So that is the reason whenever you execute your program, so this ETL tool takes the responsibility of extracting the data from your sources, and it will during the extraction phases and during this process, it will bring all this data into your ETL server. And while it is bringing this data into ETL server, it will convert all these data sets into ETL specific technology data types and ETL specific or ETL server understandable data structures. Here it may have what structure, I don't care. Here you may have data in what structure, I don't care. But when the data comes to your ETL server, it is going to convert into your data into ETL understandable data structure. In a simple way, it is kind of a broker intermediate person here. So once the data comes over here, and since both have become ETL specific data structure, and it will be easy for ETL server to join them because now both have become, so it lose the originality. The data values will never change, but the kind of data format and structure will become uniform over here. So that is where your ETL server can understand both of them. So once your data comes to your ETL server, which is transformed to your ETL specific, and then it is going to join both data sets. So typically this activity will be done by your source qualifier in your Informatica, and then in data stage it will be done by your data stage job sources. So once you get over here and it is going to join these two inputs in a ETL server, and once the join is completed, the final resultant data is going to be loaded into your final target. And all these activities, and once you graphically develop your code, and the backend, your ETL server is going to generate the code, the real code for us, and then it is going to process the data like this. So in this process, what is happening is, first we are extracting the data and then transforming the data and then loading the data to final target. Okay, but what is the specialty, or if I say it is following the ETL methodology, but how can I differentiate, or how can I say okay it is a ETL methodology, or in one liner how can I define a ETL methodology? So diagrammatically it is fine, but if I want to define ETL methodology in a simple way, in a ETL methodology, data processing or data transformation is being done on ETL engine. And if you look at the data complete transformations are being done in your ETL server itself. Okay. So that is proven, and for the last many years there is no complaints, and then many of the tools are following this methodology and then successful, and still it is continued. Okay, but what are the major pain points in the ETL methodology? In the older days, like it was it's very well aware that the data volumes in every organization used to be very smaller, and even if we are implementing the data warehousing, initially our loads will be very minimal, and then as we keep growing, your sizes will be touching too much, like terabytes and petabytes. In the older days, we used to talk about GBs, but now we are not even talking about the terabytes, we are talking about the petabytes. So as your volume grows, okay, and definitely your data processing also is going to be become slow. And now the volumes are growing, and then data processing complexity also has been increased. So that is how, whenever you are following ETL methodology, the major drawback in the ETL methodology is, I cannot say drawback, it is one of the pain points. So in case you have more data, or in case you are processing data, if you see, always your data is getting processed on ETL engine. So in case you have 1 GB data and 1 GB data, and when you are processing through ETL methodology, during this process period, you will have 2 GB data processed in your ETL server. And if your data grows in your sources, then it is also going to occupy more space on your ETL server. Of course, that is a temporary purpose during the process period only, but we need to have all the data transferred onto ETL server, and then it is getting processed on the ETL server. So in older days, it was fine, volumes are smaller, but now the ETL jobs have become increased, and in every ETL job, the volume which process has been increased. So that is the reason, if you are doing so many jobs in a parallel processing, and if I bring all the data into ETL server, and I need to have a ETL server hardware capacity to be increased to accommodate all these data processing to be done on ETL server. And because we are running more jobs at a time, and then every job our volumes also increase. So at any given point of time, your ETL server will be occupied with a very high volumes. So if your server capacity is very smaller and then volume is more, okay, then it is going to slow down your process. And there are two options. One is you have to minimize your data, or you need to increase your data, increase your hardware capacity. So you need to increase your hardware sizing. So the problem is, if you increase hardware sizing, that will attract additional cost in the organization. That will increase your total cost to or like total TCO of your project. And even if you are increasing hardware, since you are processing your data on your ETL, okay, and then you will get lot of the roadblocks in the data processing that will make your data processing simpler, the slower. So very high level in ETL approach, okay, the main I cannot say drawback, the pain point is the data being processed on ETL engine, and if your volumes are very bigger, your process is going to be very small. And even if you want to increase your processing capabilities, and we need to increase the hardware sizing, that may attract additional cost. And also the last point, generally ETL engines are not really very famous for the data processing, and initially they were very famous for extracting the data from heterogeneous databases and loading data to heterogeneous targets. That was the prime objective initially, and then also generating the code on behalf of the developer. But also they are done tremendous improvements in a data processing, but still we lag because of this methodology, because we are pushing every data onto the ETL server. Okay, so that is where now we have an alternate methodology which is called ELT. The same example if I do in a ELT, we'll see like how it is going to happen. Say for example, I have two inputs, EMP and then department, and then this data I need to join and then finally load into Oracle database here. And in case you are planning to use any ELT tool, so if you see, again first I need a server or a system where I will have a ODI server installed, and typically I will also develop the code in a graphical fashion similar to Informatica, and that is all the same thing. There will not be any much difference. But when you execute your code which is developed in ODI, and what it does, in a previous case your data is getting, so here also both are Greek Latin only, and then they don't know each other, we need a intermediate broker. But an earlier case your ETL server was bringing data to your ETL engine, but whereas in ELT methodology, typically when you use ODI, it is not going to bring your data into ODI server, and for that it will depend on a database. So typically here your target database, your target typically now is going to be in some XYZ database. In example, you can say it is Oracle. So in this case, what it does, it will try to push whatever input sources you have into your Oracle database, and for that, first initially it will create some temporary or dummy tables in your database. So this is your target, and in a target database, or you can prefer any of the database. Ideally it will prefer these temporary or dummy tables to be created in your target database. You can choose a different schema or you can use a different also, but ideally the best scenario is create some temporary dummy tables with exact structure of your source in your target database or in some database. But again, who is going to create these tables? So, okay, developer need not worry about creating these tables, and that responsibility will be taken care by ODI itself. And once these temporary tables are created in your database, then it will push your data from your source to your temporary tables. So that is the reason we are extracting the data and then loading data your temporary tables. And for this matter, the code generation and table creation will be done by your ODI server itself, and the developer need not to worry. Okay. So now once you complete this phase, okay, extraction and loading, and if you forget about the source, if you look at the part 2, this the right hand side part, your target is in a database, and then your source data which you are supposed to be processed also is in a database. So now if you go and call any person who knows little bit of database knowledge, if you give him a task that what we are supposed to do, I need to join both. So that is here. If I give this task to anyone who have a database knowledge, he can simply do. He can write a simple query, okay, which can do all your activities in one shot. So here also ODI, in the same way, once your data comes over here, it is going to generate a typical SQL on its own to transform the data. That is like say select star from this temporary tables or work tables or dummy tables, okay, and then it is going to generate a SQL for us, and then during the transformation itself is going to insert your data into your target. Okay, so in this case your data transformation is completely being done on a database, and as you keep doing your transformation, and finally it is going to load data your final target table. So this is the reason in a ELT process, extract, load and transform, and also again it is going to load into your final target. So if you want to understand, you can also keep one more L also, but typically the loading is being done while your transformation is being done. So generally we don't talk about that L, but in a reality there will be one more L, means in the back when it is really processing the data. So this way in ELT approach, always your data transformations are being done on a database engine rather than outside. So what is the advantage here is that, and also one more point, for this matter, the code generation will be completely done by your ODI server itself. And once your data activity is completed, whatever data you have in your work temporary tables will be automatically cleaned by your ODI itself. To do all these activities, we have different ready usable templates called knowledge module, and that is another power in ODI server. Okay, if you look at ELT in a one-liner, in ELT the data processing is being done on a database, but what is the advantage? I don't need to have a very big server for ODI here. I can just have a very thin layer for ODI server. And even if you see the real implementation, most of the time, if you are using any Oracle Exadata database or any big Oracle database, mostly we'll use the database itself as a processing engine, because we need database power but not a ODI power here. There is no server power. That is the reason in bigger implementations where we have a Oracle Exadata or a very big database server, and we will use the database server itself as a ODI server, and because it doesn't require much additional capacity from the ODI side. Okay, so what is the advantage here? Since you are doing the data processing on the database, it is very proven that always data processing is much faster in database than compared to the outside, that is the ETL engine or any other engine. And it is proven by Informatica and IBM itself that is the reason. If you go and complain Informatica Corporation that I have a mapping taking too much time, and they will give you guideline instruction that you design your mapping such a way that it will process the data on a database. Either you push transformation logic onto the source qualifier, or you put that logic onto the target side, so it will be faster. So we have to minimize the data processing on the ETL server. That is also agreed by Informatica. But here by default your data processing is being done on the ETL database itself. So no complaints, and then it will be much faster. And then now you can ask one more question like here. So since we are doing the data processing on the database, so do we need a big database server? So obviously we need a big database server. Okay, but in case you are processing huge volumes, and then also you have so many jobs you are running at a time, but still no complaint, because most of the times when you are building data warehousing any big project, generally we don't keep databases sizing which is always 100% occupied. Always our databases will be having the sizing to meet your next 1 or 2 years requirement. Uh, and also one more very important point here is that most of the times this ETL processing we do at the offline times, okay, and off peak business hours. So typically that is the night times. So during the night time, your database, your data warehousing database is completely sitting idle, because all your customers will be like in a sleep mode. Your database is completely unoccupied. So generally we do our ETL process in the off peak hours. So it is going to utilize complete ID sitting, the memory which is sitting idle in a normal case. So that's the reason you will not have any complaints about adding additional hardware or any additional resources to your database, and we can utilize very much existing the databases, because the kind of culture we have in a ETL and also the data processing side, and the timings and everything will get better suits for this kind of data processing. So that way also no complaints. And also since it is much faster in the database, okay, and then data processing speed, if you compare from the most of the times 70 to 80% of the times it is much faster than the outside, and no additional cost is involved. And but there will be certain cases 10 to 20% to type of jobs may also faster outside than the database, but that you have to make a balance of that one, the 10 to 20%. Some means I mean to say some of the jobs may run better outside of the database, okay, and those things we need to tweak out, and then the percentage will be very smaller. So that is where, and in ELT methodology, data processing is being done on database engine, and for that matter whatever code to be generated and everything will be taken care by ODI itself. And that is where ODI has the power of ELT concept. And the one more the benefit in ODI is that pretty much code development and all the tools very much similar, but there is one more benefit in ODI also. So ODI has something called a knowledge module, and the power of the knowledge module is to give a simple example. Say for example, now I want to travel from Hyderabad to say New Delhi. That is my ETL activity. And when you are traveling, you have like option, like say for example, if I am developing a code in Informatica to read from one source to load into one target, so you just run your code. Informatica is generating one code in the backend. Even you cannot see that code, it runs it. That's all. But when it comes to ODI, once you develop your code, what kind of code to be generated in the backend to run this process to support the different templates available in ODI, which are known as the knowledge module. In a simple way, if you go and tell that okay, I want to travel from Hyderabad to New Delhi, if you go to one travel guy, he has only one option, okay, that is a train. He is going to give a train ticket. Always you have to go by train. But if you go to another travel agency, is giving you so many options. You want to go by flight, or if you want to go by bus, you want to go by train. Okay, depends on your budget. If you have more money, you can book a travel. If you have a like minimal average, you can go by train, or if you are if you want a dead cheap, you can go by bus. It's giving me more options, and from which I can choose. Here also ODI gives you lot of templates to process or to generate any code. You can pick up whichever template you want, and each template will have a different type of code generation utility. So as per the template which I have selected, it is going to generate code for us. So that way we have plenty of options in code generation. So that is another benefit from the ODI. But overall, ETL versus ELT, so this is the concept. But ODI is going to use 100% ELT, and also on top of that it has a support of knowledge module. Both mixing, you will get lot of performance benefit, and then also code reusable benefit. That is the comparison over here. Okay, but at the same time other tools also nowadays supporting ELT kind of methodology, but that percentage is very smaller. But this is completely built on ELT methodology itself. Okay, so I will stop it for today, and then from tomorrow we are going to start what is ODI architecture. Okay, what are the different versions we have, and from the installation point of view, what are the major components we have, how do we do all those things. Okay, that will be starting from tomorrow. Okay, so hope it is clear, and then if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise we'll wind up, and then we'll continue from tomorrow.